Hello and welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast. We have a very special episode for you today, so stick around. Today we have with us Andre Tavaerz. We're going to talk about the short-faced tumblers in general, and specifically we're going to touch on the English short-faced tumbler. Andre has been involved with pigeons since he was 10 years old. He was one of the first to ever fly 500 rollers at once and is known for his own line of almond rollers. He has won the reserve champion for short-faced plainhead at the AHA in 2023, got first place at the Reading Pigeon Association in January of 2023, and recently he has got the first place champion for the English short-faced tumbler in 2024 at the National Pigeon Association National Show. So Andre, thanks for coming on and talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been involved with pigeons since you were 10. What was your pathway into getting into the short-faced tumblers?
Okay, when I was a kid, I used to go down to the pet shop out here in New York, in Brooklyn, and there would be lots of pigeons in there. And what attracted me to the short-faced birds were the beaks on the sides of the birds. That all the big birds had these long beaks, and the small birds with the little beaks, those really stood out, and I just really loved them from that time.
So the term short-faced tumblers really covers a wide span, and you've dealt a lot with the English short-faced tumblers, but can you get into the history of the short-faced tumblers and what all that includes when someone says that?
The very first short-faced tumbler ever bred in history is called the Ancient, and it's appropriately named because it's the oldest of all short-faced breeds. It's the book of Wendell Levi describes the Ancient as the ancestor of all short-faced breeds, which means that this bird been around for years and years. I'm not sure if it's 17 something BC or 1700 BC. It's a long time ago that this bird was developed in ancient Persia, Middle Eastern area. As the English folks went into this place and found this beautiful bird, it was brought back to England. The breed has been defined as a show breed from England, and many breeds came out of that one because that was the original short-faced bird.
And are these strictly showbirds now, or does anybody fly these, or for tumbling or anything like that?
No. These are all strictly showbirds now. The flying ability has been wiped out from it because such a rare bird, and you don't want to lose this bird just for any reason of flying. They're not easily replaceable because of the breeding reasons.
And with it being an older breed, can you pretty much get all the different colors that you would want?
It's up to what the standard says that the colors are involved. Me being an exhibitor, a breeder and an exhibitor, I only breed to the standard. And then if the standard does require you to be straightforward and stick to the standard, which means they don't want any colors that are not in the standard. Otherwise, those colors will be called mismark and they will be disqualified from the show. So you have to stick to the standard.
So with this being a short-faced and a non-flying bird, what kind of setups do you have to have in their loft? Is it, how would it be different than other lofts?
Well, one thing, the shelf size is smaller because you do not need a lot of space to house these birds since they're not tall. And I'm just going to give you a generalization on short faces, not a particular type of short face, because it's the same rule of thumb is for all of them. You don't need a lot of space to house them, but they do require exercise, plenty as much, and just like any bird, the bigger the environment, the better for the bird for exercise purposes. But if you just want to house them, you don't need that much space. They can take a shelf that would be like 10 inches tall by a foot wide and then a foot deep like that. As opposed to you have like some homers, you need to get some really big shelves. So these birds don't require a lot of space when it comes for breeding, because when the breeding season comes, they don't need to sit on their own eggs. You just substitute the eggs to the foster parents. So you just need them to lay and get ready for the next round of laying.
Okay. And that kind of was going to the next question right there is, with the short face like that, you do have to foster these babies?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. You have to. It depends on the breed, though. Like I said, we were talking about short-faced breeds. The general thing to do is to foster parent them. You want your reproduction to be really fast, then you don't let them sit on their own eggs. You swap them right away. I will get a little technical with that. if you're an experienced breeder like I am, like I've been doing this for years and years and years, and I don't want that many babies. So I will let the parents go through the cycle of breeding, which means laying eggs and hatching their own and milking them for a few days, and then the babies get swapped over to the foster parents. But that's not for everybody.
What breed do you use for fostering?
Rollers.
Rollers. Any
Yeah.
particular reason? Just they got the good size and good parents?
No, the reason why I use rollers is because those are the birds I had before I started getting involved with short faces in this place where I'm at now.
Are there any other issues that come up when you're breeding this type of bird right here? I mean, do they have fertility issues or anything like that?
No, I think the fertility's been pretty good, but the problem is, especially for novice breeders, is getting the hatchlings to survive day one. That is your biggest obstacle in the game there. Experienced breeders know what to do when hatchlings are hatched, and it doesn't matter if they're under the foster parents or under the original parents. The hatchling is susceptible to die fast because they don't pick their heads up like a normal baby would, per se. A normal baby will hatch out of the nest, hatch out of the egg. As soon as the baby dries up, the egg yolk, well, that area that is still nourishing the baby, after it hatches, it dries out. Now the baby gets hungry, and now he wants to eat. Some of them are too busy sleeping it away that they do not pick up their heads and ask for food. They don't beg for food at that stage. So what the experienced breeder will do is, that's why I say timing is everything. The breeder will go and lift up the foster parent, take the baby out of the nest, and milk him himself with a syringe, like a really, really micro syringe that, actually it's called a pipette. And you have to get a substitute milk for it, which is called pigeon crop milk. And you have to mix the formula in very warm water and keep it warm as you feed it to the babies. And less is more. You cannot overfeed these 1-day-olds because otherwise they will choke and die, or they can't breathe, and you'll drown them if you give them too much food. The thing that I have around here is less is more, because when you give them a little bit of food, the crop milk, they're gonna take it in really, really well, and you could see that their little crops are a little pouched up into, it looks like a little white ball right underneath their beaks, like right under where the crop area is. And now you put the baby back to the foster parents, and the foster parent is gonna sit on them and continue to keep them warm. Now, when this baby has absorbed all this baby food, that is this baby crop milk, pigeon crop milk that has been fed, it's going to get this serious awakening. Like, it's going to be energetic. It's going to beg for food. It has this energy, and it wants to get fed. So now it will pick up its head and it will rub its mother's or father's belly, asking for food, and the foster parents will gladly milk a baby that's asking.
How long are you doing the feeding then? Just for a day or so?
Sometimes sometimes all it takes is one time, because what the objective is to get the baby to ask for food. That's the objective. You want him to grow, to get energy, so that he can lift himself up and beg for food. Like tiplets and homers and flights, all those things, when they hatch, they already pick their heads up and start begging for food as soon as they're hungry. Short faces don't do that.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's definitely some really good advice right there.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of specific health issues that are associated with this breed?
I would say that, great husbandry is the right idea. They're susceptible to like eye infections a lot, and that is because when they're drinking, they usually put their whole face in the water, so the beaks are so small.
Yeah.
They can't use their beak as straws like a normal, like a homer with domestic short flight roller, those kind of birds. So the short face will dip his whole face into the water container. Sometimes the eyes can get a little bit of an eye infection from this reason. The best way to handle these birds is to feed them in a cup source that is not so deep, so that way they don't have to stick their whole heads in there.
Oh, smart. There you go. That's a good solution. So let's talk about getting these birds ready for a show. And you were talking about the standard and things like that to begin with. So what's your routine before a show, and how far out are you pulling these birds and everything else?
Okay, it all starts with, for me, I start prepping my birds for the show season during the molting season, which is for me is the end of is the beginning, actually the beginning of August, and then through September and October. Those months are the preparation for the show season. The most important thing that I gotta keep my birds is or keep parasites off of my birds. You know, like feather louse, lice, maybe mites, or any kind of. Let me just say something. There used to be a fly that used to be attached to pigeons that I have not seen in like 25 years, and I'm glad I didn't see that fly. It used to just roll all over. Used to go all around the pigeon, and I don't see that no more. I'm not sure if it's extinct or not, but I haven't seen it. So what we do now is clean up your birds by giving them baths, and it's better. The treatment works better when they take a bath themselves, as opposed to you could spray the coop, you could spray the birds, but nothing works better than them taking a bath with the parasite treatments in the water. And that's the first thing that I do during the molting season. That way, anything that's attached to the pigeon would come off on their feathers and come right back on the bird once the feathers get off once the feathers are on the ground. Those lice and mice will come back to the pigeon. So now what I want to do is keep them parasite free by I give them ivermectin. I trick that parasite. I give them just in case they develop some type of immune system towards it. So I use ivermectin. Is a cowporon solution, and I also use borax. I use sawtooth soap baths, and I also use bleach in my baths. So I give my birds all these different baths. So then by the time the show season comes, when you look, because there's shows that when you're showing the pigeon, they actually have a floodlight or fluorescent light right there. So the judge would pick up the bird by the wings and by he holds them in his hand, and then with one hand he'll stretch out his wings and put them on the light to see if there's any pinholes or any mice or lice, anything that's not supposed to be on the bird. That's one of the most important things I do. And then the second thing I do that's very important is beak filing. Some people use nail clippers and all that. The professional guys, I like to call them that, we use files. And we can use like a nail clipper a little bit. The reason why we use files is because when you clip, and let's say you hit the vein at the end of the beak, the bird's going to bleed right away. Now, if you're filing, as you file, you will see if there's anything that you need to stay away from, because you're taking your time as you file. When you clip, there's no going back on that. Once you cut the vein at the end of the beak, the bird is going to start bleeding. And if it's a white bird, like I have short face helmets, birds are completely white except for the tail and the head. And if you clip that little blood vein on the end of the beak, that white belly on that bird is going to get full of blood. And now he's not a show bird no more. Now he's so dirty that not even bleach will get that out. So you got to be very careful with that.
So when you're doing the filing, are you kind of just looking at the standard and like the shape that you're working with there and trying to achieve that?
Yes. Okay, I'll give you an example. I have English short-faced tumblers. The standard for those birds require that the beak be as much as a finch-like as possible.
Oh, wow.
So you have to file the beak in the shape of a V. There's different beaks for different short faces. Like for the ancient breed, it's more of a little of a bot's beak. It's almost like a little square beak. Like you take a cubic or a bot, and you put the edge part towards the front of the, like you just see the front, the two angles, the two sides, and the very end just meets right there. That's the beak of an ancient. If you show a English short-faced tumbler, you want to see a V formation looking at you, that the point is sticking out. That is a finch beak. So all these short-faced breeds have their own beak setting and their own beak that the standard is asking for.
So what about the ice ear? Do you do any kind of like vet RX on the ice ear or on the feet or anything like that?
No, depending. See, that's another thing too. Like I'm talking a lot about the standard because that's our holy grail when it comes to breeding. The standard on some breeds requires that the sear be as natural as possible without any. They cannot have like a suntan, and the sear is red because now that's not part of the standard. You have to pay very close attention to the standard before you get involved with breeding. You have to read and study the standard deeply and thoroughly. That way you stay in the standard. Once you get out of the standard, now the bird is not a show bird no more. Now he's a bird you brought to the show, and that's not going to win. because the judge knows the standard and knows that bird is not supposed to look like that.
You were just at the National Young Bird Show, right?
Yes.
How far of a drive is that for you? And how do you transport your birds to a show if it's a long drive?
It's a 12-hour ride, but for me, it's usually longer because I leave early and stuff, and I'm not like rushing there. One of the things that I do so that my birds can get there comfortable, because pigeons get dirty after they're touching each other and fighting inside a cramped up cage or a cramped up pigeon carrier. So what I do is I use cedar chips on the floor, and I try not to stuff too many into a carrier. That way if there's a little fighting going on, whoever doesn't want to fight can always run away. Try to keep them clean as much as possible. And another thing too that I also have pigeon carriers that have these divided sections in there that they're not in contact with any other pigeon in the case because there's dividers in between. That's also a good source and a good way to carry them.
Yeah, those are nice carriers where you can put them in their own individual compartments. Yeah, no worries
Right.
about mixing up at all with something like that.
Yes.
With that really short beak like that, do you feed them just regular pigeon seed, or do you have to get like a crumbler or anything like that broken down more for them, or can they handle seeds?
There is a seed for them. It's called short face mix. They can basically eat any kind of seed as long as it's not so big. Like they can't eat like regular corn size, and some type of peas will choke the short face birds. So you got to be careful that they're not like peas for human consumption and stuff like that, like beans and big peas. But there are certain peas that they can eat, like mung peas, little white peas. They can eat another thing too. They can eat is called Australian peas. This is one source that when I'm hand raising baby short faces, I have a instrument here that I call it a pea shooter. It's 12 inches long. It has like a bubble on the bottom. And this bubble is handmade. This is something that the breeders make. I made this. I forgot what it's called when you go buy it, but what it is what parents use to draw the mucus from the baby's nose.
Okay, yeah.
Right. This is what we use. So what I do is take a tube, clear tubing, like for a fish tank that is solid tube, and it's maybe like a quarter in diameter by 12 inches long. And then at one end of the tube, I score it with a hacksaw and I make an X on it, or a plus, it looks like a plus. Then I run it over my the stove, and I take that end of the tube with a pair of gloves or a spoon or something, and I make sure that I make the all four corners meet inside, so that when I put it back into that little bubble, and it's inside there nice and tight, when I draw water, and then I put a handful of peas down that tube, the peas do not fall back into the bubble because there's a block down there. That's what I use to feed when I'm hand rearing short-faced tumblers. And I only use peas at that time. And it's very successful.
What's their temperament like? Being a showbird, are they pretty easy to handle?
Well, like most birds, if you handle your birds and your birds are not afraid of you, and you fire the beaks constantly, like every time, because these birds do require some grooming and some maintenance. So you handle these birds as much as possible so that when they go to the show, they're not afraid of the judge and like running away and all skittish and all that. No, you don't want that. You want the bird to be tame as possible. So when they're going to be handled, there's no fuss. So that's pretty good when the birds are easily to handle. Not only that, they show better when they're tame too, because now I'm going to give you a scenario. A couple of years ago, I entered a whole bunch of pigeons because I'm also a member of the American Short-Faced Club, and that club shows at Lancaster. So I had brought a bunch of English short-faced tumblers. I brought English short-faced tumbler ballheads and English short-faced tumbler cells. When they called the cells, the judge says, okay, send up all the cells. Student went and got all the cells. Those are all the solid color birds. He brought them up there. I knew my birds because I know them right away. As soon as he put all my birds together in the big mix where the show pen was going to be at, one of my birds just stood out like a sore thumb. He started performing as soon as he got in there. He was dancing, he was trotting, he was going all around, he was cocking off, he was showing off. And the judge said, wow, I mean, look at this bird here. He didn't even get to pick him up. He said, oh, wow, look at this bird here. He hasn't stood still since he's been here. He's a show-off. And not only he's a show-off, I don't have a reason to pick anyone else but him. Look at him. He is the best here. his performance was outstanding. I won with that one. So one of those awards that you called out before came from that guy, and I still have them.
What age do you start doing the cage training and show cage training?
Let's say you're going to bring the young birds into a young bird show. You don't have to worry too much about that because the judges know that all these birds are young birds and they're inexperienced. So they can be flighty or they could be docile. It doesn't matter with that. And another thing too, it doesn't matter that they're fully feathered because young birds are usually not fully feathered so they mature and molted out.
And you mentioned that you're a member of, was it the American Short Face Club?
And the Empire.
Is that a local club or is that a state club?
The Empire, it's been established since 1947, and I've been a member from that club for maybe 7 years. The American Short Face, I've been a member maybe for 5 years in that club. Here's what happened. I've been breeding and keeping short face pigeons for a long time. I just never wanted to join the club because I was not really interested in showing. So when I really decided to join the club, it was because I was interested in getting their bands on my birds. It was my promotion. You know, I wanted it to promote my birds, and I wanted them to have a band that came from a club with a good reputation on shortface. So I joined the Empire Shortface Tumbler Club.
Are there any national or international clubs for the short face breeds?
Oh yeah, sure. There's international shows and everything up in Europe, but here in the United States, what we do is the Empire Shortface Tumbler. Well, that's not what it's called now. That was the original name. It's not what it's called now. It's the Empire Shortface Club because now we don't only cover tumblers, we cover different breeds of short faces. We have the American Shortface as well, and all these clubs. Here's what they do: they participate in the Grand Nationals and Lancasters and shows like that.
Yeah, so if someone's interested in getting into this breed, joining one of those clubs would probably be the best way to start, wouldn't you say?
It'll be a great idea to pick some brains there and get to know some people that have experience with these breeds. They can teach you the in and outs of the breeds. If you want to, because there's a lot of objectives. There's people that get involved with short faces because they like them, and they're not necessarily interested in showing. And there's guys that are like me that are interested in showing because I love competing and I love winning. So I gotta do the best thing for the breed too, you know, by breeding the best I can.
Did you ever have a mentor when you first got started in this breed?
I had a lot of trials and errors at one point, but I did learn a lot more when I joined the club. When I joined the Empire, there's guys there. We have a lot of master breeders there that became friends with, and guys that I can call and ask them for, you know, these guys have way more experience with showing than I do. And also with breeding, because there's, you know, you can't, when it comes to these birds, you just don't know everything, you know, there's still a lot to learn. So it's a great start I say one of the best things to do is come down to the club, join the club, buy some birds there, support the club in any way you can, and learn. Because I think experience with the breed is probably the best teacher. Getting some experience. Nobody can teach you that. You get hands-on is probably the best.
Right, yeah. You just got to do it.
Yeah. And then ask questions, of course. Ask questions. What are the obstacles in breeding? You know, what do you suggest is the best foster parents and stuff like that? And there's a lot of different opinions, but they're mostly all good.
Yeah, especially if you're talking to someone who's in the club, who's been around this breed for years. You know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel if you can, you know, get some help like that. That'd be really good.
Absolutely.
All righty. Well, we're coming up against the clock, but I really appreciate your time and coming on and sharing all your knowledge and experience with us and talking about this really cool breed.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. Please help the pigeon hobby by telling your fellow club members or other pigeon friends about the podcast, and make sure to leave a good review or at least a 5-star for the podcast wherever you listen. If you have a topic or a person you want to hear more about on the podcast, or if you yourself would like to be a guest, just send an email to allaboutpigeonspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.